Have you entered a new environment and suddenly realized the things that used to work don't work anymore? Maybe you moved to a new country, maybe you started a new job, maybe you are in a relationship with someone who sees the world differently from you. You are still the same person, you are still trying your best, but somehow people react differently, conversations feel different. And sometimes you start questioning yourself, am I doing something wrong? I know this feeling because I have experienced it myself. For many years, I know exactly what my job was. I teach Chinese, I teach English, help people adapt into different cultures and countries. And when I started teaching 14 years ago, I thought the solution was really simple: more vocabulary, more grammar, more practice. And honestly, that makes sense, right? Because it is how most of us learn. But then something started bothering me. When I was teaching Chinese back in US, I met people who were working incredibly hard. They studied every day, they memorized hundreds or thousands of words, they understood grammar, but when they had a real conversation, something changed. My students would tell me, Max, I understand Chinese, but when I need to speak, my brain just don't know what to do. And honestly, that really bothered me a lot because I knew they were trying, they weren't lazy, they weren't incapable. Maybe the problem was not the effort, maybe the problem was the system they were using to learn. And the strange thing was, the more I look at the problem, the more I realized that I had experienced the similar stuff myself. Years earlier, I moved to the United States to do my PhD in cognitive psychology and second language acquisition. At that time, I was fascinated by one question: how do humans learn and how do humans adapt? But living in another country gives me a very personal answer. When I first arrived in US, I experienced culture shock. I remember sitting in meetings or seminars, seeing people share ideas before they were perfect. I was sitting in the back corner of the classroom and I wondered, why am I waiting? Why am I filtering myself? For a while, I thought something was wrong with me. To fit in better, so I started imitating my American classmates to share my ideas openly in their classroom, no matter whether I'm ready or not. But 5 years later, when I moved back to China, something unexpected happened. I experienced reverse culture shock. The same person, the same me, but the environment around me required a really different way of thinking and behaving. Same context in meetings or seminars, people around me or my colleagues, they always remain silent. They don't talk that much. But I talk. 会有一点觉得怪怪的. And that's when I started asking, maybe people are not changing. Maybe they're adapting to different systems. The more I explored this question, the more I realized that this pattern actually appears everywhere because every system shapes three things: learning, understanding, and decision making. In language learning, the challenge is not only words, it's learning how a different brain organizes meaning. In culture, behavior is never just behavior. Behind every action, there are values, expectations, and history, which is actually integrated into every aspect of our life. In some cultures, showing love means adjusting yourself or sometimes even sacrificing yourself for the relationship. In other cultures, showing love means helping each other to remain independent. We can't judge which culture is right or wrong, right? Because they are just behaving in their own systems. And in business, misunderstandings happen just because people interpret the same signals differently. Different areas, different problems, but the same question. What system is creating this behavior? Just because the answer to that question actually is not fixed. People are not always making bad decisions. They're often making logical decisions inside a different operating system. 中国有一句古话叫做你知蜜糖，我知砒霜. What works for you in your environment sometimes doesn't work in my system at all. So, the problem is we see the behavior, but we don't see the system behind it. But I also want to be honest, seeing different systems isn't always comfortable because once you understand different perspectives, you lose the simplicity that you believe one side is always right. Sometimes people ask me, which side are you on? And honestly, I can't even give an easy answer. But then I realized the goal is not to choose a side faster. The goal is to understand better so we can make better decisions that work the best for us. So back to the question of why I started China OS on Xiaohongshu and YouTube. At first, I was just sharing my observations, actually in different areas, maybe in language learning, in Chinese culture, or in business context, because these were questions I personally struggled with. But then people started to reach out, students, business professionals, people who want to understand China better. And they realized that's not only my question. Many people were facing the same challenge and they are looking for the answers. They don't need more information because nowadays information is everywhere. They needed a way to understand, a framework, a way to see hidden systems behind human behaviors from different cultures, and that's become China OS. So here I'd love to appreciate all my viewers or all my followers who trusted me, who saw my videos, who left the comments, who reached out to me. Actually, it is because of you that support me to continue making this content. I hope that will be helpful to more people around the world, because I understand the feeling of living in struggles. And I sincerely hope you can avoid that or get past that or overcome that sooner than me. Back to the main topic. Today, I don't think the most valuable skill is collecting more information. The more valuable skill is understanding systems. Because when you can see different perspectives, you have more choices. You can learn better, can work better, build better relationships, make better decisions. You don't have to become someone else. You just need to understand the system you are operating in.